Welcome to Session 2 on Culpeper Baptist history with Roger and Dan talking about John Leland. And we really don't know how many sessions we're going to do on John Leland because we got a lot to cover. But in our last session, we talked about some of his biographical information and how he was connected to Culpeper Baptist Church. And when we left off last time, we had this picture up with Madison and Leland and their so-called debate in orange. So Roger, pick up right back there and tell us a little bit more about the actual debate and how that went with Madison and Leland there.
Okay, several days after they had met at Leland's house, they met again. And this time, most of the county of Orange was at the meeting, and they were at this time ready to debate each other. So Mr. Madison went first. He got up on the barrel and began to talk, and for 2 hours he debated and answered questions concerning the Constitution. After that, John Leland got up on the barrel, and basically he threw his support in for James Madison.
Right. And that's just a beautiful picture of a lot of people from the county coming out and being involved in our democracy, and then two candidates really working for what's best and not working to tear each other down. And there's a lot to be said just in the way they interacted with each other. So Leland believed that every person had an inalienable right to worship or not worship based on their own sense of conscience, what they felt led to do. And so in this session, we want to give you just a bunch of quotes by Leland and make sure we understand the fullness of who he was. So one of his quotes, some people say that, those founding people only thought of the United States in terms of Christianity, but Leland said government should be so fixed that pagans, Turks, Jews, and Christians should be equally protected in their rights. He had a broad view of religious liberty for his day. This is one of the quotes that I really love, and I've used in a few sermons. Leland was scared of a government and church getting too close together, and he said that the fondness of magistrates to foster Christianity has done it more harm than all the persecution ever did. Persecution, like a lion, tears the saints to death, but leaves Christianity pure. State establishment of religion, like a bear, hugs the saints, but corrupts Christianity and reduces it to a level with state policy. Leland was influenced probably by Roger Williams. He had a very strong view that Christianity should not be privileged or connected to the state, that would always be a bad thing. My church history professor liked to say in our church history classes in seminary that every time the church and the state get together, the church always loses. And I think we need to remember that, because I think Leland had that idea too. And there was a conversation during that time that we should make Christianity the religion of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And Leland had thoughts on everything, and he certainly had thoughts on this. And he wrote, the notion of a Christian commonwealth should be exploded forever. So, again, his commitment to religious liberty was firm and consistent throughout his life. Let's go back to kind of the First Amendment. You pick us up there with Madison's words and how we use the First Amendment.
Okay, first of all, let's go back to the barrel and the debate again.
Yeah.
One of the first things that Madison did after the first Congress was organized in 1789 was to propose certain amendments to the Constitution. The first of which says, Congress shall make no law respecting to the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or the press or the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances.
Right, and Leland's support of Madison came about because of Madison's commitment to the First Amendment. And why this matters is if Leland and the Baptists had not supported Madison in the Constitution and the ratification of the Constitution of Virginia, then it more than likely would not have been ratified in Virginia. And if it wouldn't have been ratified in Virginia, even though it had been ratified in other states at that time, if Virginia didn't go along, it wouldn't have been ratified across the nation. So I don't think we can overstate the influence of John Leland in all of this conversation, that the Baptists in Virginia and John Leland would only support the Constitution provided it had this First Amendment in it. And I think we need to remember that today, as the temptation is often strong to do other things. Let me talk a little bit about a quote that Leland had about religion and elections that I think is still maybe something we could apply to our life today. He wrote, "Guard against those men who make a great noise about religion in choosing representatives. It is electioneering. If they knew the nature and worth of religion, they would not debauch it to such shameful purposes. If pure religion is the criterion to denominate candidates, those who make a noise about it must be rejected, for their wrangle about it proves that they are void of it. Let honesty, talents, and quick dispatch characterize the men of your choice." So what Leland's saying that we could apply in our day is, we don't want candidates that are out there carrying the Christian banner, so to speak. Leland would have been violently opposed to that. He thought the essence of your faith should not be spilling out in a way to try to get votes. And I think if there's anything we need to remember, again, the radicalness of Leland, that we should just vote on people based on their ability to do the job, not on their faith perspective. And again, he got fired at Culpeper Baptist for another reason, but that might get him fired today. And I think a lot of us struggle with this. I would just encourage all of us to really kind of wrestle with his beliefs on this in our own hearts and minds, because I think we diminish our faith when we let it get co-opted by a political candidate. And I think we've seen that throughout my lifetime in this day. All right, this is, we're going to finish with a quote from you, Roger, but this is, you can't really see it that well. This is the marker of John Leland's tombstone up in Cheshire, Massachusetts. And here's what it says, and then we're going to talk about the marker that's in orange to this day. Here's his tombstone. His tombstone says this: "Here lies the body of John Leland, who labored 67 years to promote piety and vindicate the civil and religious rights of all men." I just think that's a great statement of who he was. He was a passionate preacher. I want us to make sure we understand that. He did not compromise in his passionate belief that Jesus Christ was the way, the truth, and the life, and all those kind of things. But he also did not compromise that each person had their own ability to come to that conclusion, and they should not be coerced, and the state should have no engagement with the work of faith in our world. All right, tell to us about the great monument, the marker that's in orange that we've been to a couple of times ourselves, and usually when we have guests come through Culpeper who want this story, we make them ride out there. So talk to us about that marker.
Okay, this marker was erected in Orange County on Route 20 and Clifton Road, which is also Route 628. The inscription reads, "Courageous leader of the Baptist doctrine, ardent advocate of the principles of democracy, vindicator of separation of church and state. Near this spot in 1788, Elder John Leland and James Madison, the father of the American Constitution, held a significant interview which resulted in the adoption of the Constitution by Virginia. Then Madison, a member of Congress from Orange, presented the First Amendment to the Constitution, guaranteeing religious liberty, free speech, and a free press."
Right. And I think all of us, when we have opportunity, should stop on at that park. It's easy to find there in Orange, and just spend a few moments and be aware of the influence of John Leland in this time. Roger, before we conclude this session, I want you to just tell us a little bit about some of the books we have on the table today. A History of the Rise and Progress of the Baptist in Virginia. Talk a little bit about that book.
Well, it's just a good history of the Baptist and how we got started in Virginia and the progress from the initial Baptist up through and to today.
Okay. And then this is the great thing about Leland, different from some of our other founding folks. We don't have a lot of writings from them, but with Leland, we've got a lot of his stuff. This is a pretty thick book, The Writings of the Late Elder John Leland. Tell us about this book.
Well, this book not only gives the autobiography of Leland, but it also compiles a lot of his writings from his time. Not all inclusive, but it's a lot of information.
Yeah. And then talk to us about God's Stories.
God's Stories comes from the Virginia Baptist Historical Society, and in this book they have the picture of Leland on the hog's head debating with Madison.
Right. And if you would ever like to go to see the Virginia Baptist Historical Society, that's a good tour to take at the University of Richmond, and let me know, and we'll get a trip together in the future. The next session, we're going to talk about the implications of John Leland's beliefs and the passion he had for the liberty of conscience on us today. This might get a little controversial the next session, so I hope you'll join us again, and thanks for being a part of this session here today.